We've been listening to President Donald Trump and South Korean President Lee Jae-myung at the White House in the Oval Office, taking questions from reporters. A number of significant headlines during this first in-person meeting between Trump and his South Korean counterpart, the first since the South Korean presidential election in June. The president calling Lee Jae-myung a friend, saying that he feels very warmly towards South Korea. Notably, he was asked about relations between South Korea and North Korea. Trump touting his relationship with Kim Jong-un, saying that he hopes to meet with Kim Jong-un this year, even jokingly inviting the South Korean president to attend what would be a trilateral meeting together. Trump very quickly, though, after he was asked about meeting Kim Jong-un, pivoting, saying that Xi Jinping would like him to go to China. And then he talked about China giving the United States magnets in exchange for access to airplane parts, and clearly trade with China top of mind there. The president was also asked about a U.S. military presence in South Korea and what he described as a rumor about South Korean officials raiding U.S. military bases there. The South Korean president trying to clarify that, saying that the chain of command in the South Korean military was looked into after martial law, a sort of fake martial law was installed in December, and there was some issues in South Korean politics, to say the least, but a lot of headlines there from Trump.
So many, and he talked about denuclearization. He said Russia is willing to do it, referring to a conversation he'd had with Putin, and he thinks China is too. We have our Kimberly Dozier here. We're going to talk with her about that in a second. That definitely needs a fact check. He also was asked about some domestic issues that we're also going to get to here, which is about the cities that he is planning to activate National Guard in. The search on John Bolton's house by the FBI, he quickly pivoted to what he called the raid on Mar-a-Lago at his own house, as he has done before. And then he was asked about Japan and Korea, because we should note that the Korean president is coming after a visit to Japan, which is kind of uncharacteristic. Normally, he would come straight to the U.S. first, as his predecessors have, but because of, I guess, alliances that Japan and South Korea have with the U.S. being a little bit on less stable ground, it kind of speaks to Korea and Japan, who have certainly had their differences here in the past, kind of finding some common ground as they look to alternatives, as they consider these alliances with the U.S. economically and militarily a little bit more in question than usual. Kim Dozier, you were here. What stood out to you?
Well, when he talked about denuclearizing the peninsula and said that Russia and China were willing, they've tried this before, and China has never been willing to join these talks and has instead aimed for parity with whatever the U.S. and Russia currently has. In terms of him talking about, hey, let's have a meeting with Kim Jong-un, ironically, this is the right Korean president to be talking to about it, because President Lee's Democratic Party has always wanted more economic ties, lowering of tensions, more relations with the North than the previous president, President Yoon, who was, of course, deposed after he tried to declare martial law. So ironically, President Trump is reaching out to the right guy for that, but then he's also, in his tweet and then in these comments, he talked about South Korea having purges, and what he meant by that, it's emerging, is he heard about churches being raided. All that goes back to when President Yoon was kicked out of office. His wife and a number of his high-ranking officials allegedly had used the Unification Church for kickbacks and corruption, and so the raids were part of that. But conservatives in the U.S. who are talking to Trump are saying that's an attack on the conservative community. So Trump is like, on the one hand, lashing out because he hears conservatives being dealt incorrectly with, but on the other hand, this is the right guy if he wants to open relations with the North.
And notably, Yi jokingly suggested that a Trump Tower should be built in North Korea, saying, quote, so I can go play golf in Pyongyang as well. We saw President Trump, and he talked about walking into the DMZ and alleging that he had all these rifles pointed at him. Ultimately, though, no substantial agreement came out of this opening toward North Korea. Really the first time that you've had an American president literally go into North Korean territory to sort of open up a conversation with the Hermit Kingdom and Kim Jong-un. Again, nothing much came out of it. Do we expect things might go differently if that's attempted again?
You know, it all broke down essentially over the denuclearization aspect. The North is not willing to denuclearize. They signed several agreements that were very vague, that talked about denuclearization as a goal, but they didn't have a ratification method or a schedule. And since that summit, North Korea has launched something like 100 plus missiles in missile testing, has continued and expanded its nuclear weapons operations, according to experts who look at the satellite activity. So it's hard to see who or why Kim Jong-un would step back from the nuclear brink.
But Kim, this president puts a lot of stock in photo ops.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we look to the Alaska summit with Putin, and then really just what appeared to be this amazing shuttle diplomacy at the White House with all of these European leaders in Ukraine. Very quickly, though, it became clear that not much had come out of that summit with Putin. But I mean, the pictures are something you haven't seen before. The pictures with Kim Jong-un at the DMZ, something you haven't seen before. But in a way, that is enough. If you listen to President Trump, that is almost standalone to him as an accomplishment. But when you're looking at it from a national security perspective, that's not enough if it's short on deliverables.
Yeah, you know, I remember having conversations with a group of MAGA conservatives during the Biden administration where North Korea came up and they said, Trump managed to denuclearize it. And they said to me, oh, no, Trump denuclearized it and then Biden brought the nuclear weapons back. And I'm like, that's not what happened. But if Trump's base believes that, then these photo ops are serving a purpose. But back to the South Korean meeting, what's going to happen behind closed doors is Trump has been talking about possibly pulling out U.S. troops unless South Korea pays more for basing them there. Costs about $3.5 billion to keep them there annually, about 28,000 troops. South Korea already pays a little over $1 billion for it annually. So Trump will surely be asking for a higher payment. Problem is with those troops and the threat of bringing them back to the United States, there literally isn't space for them to be garrisoned back in the U.S. There would have to be major construction to bring the troops and their families back to the continental U.S.